Hey guys, tonight we are diving headfirst into a world of breathtaking, bone-chilling beauty. A realm where survival isn't just a skill, it's an art form perfected over millennia. Imagine, if you will, stepping out not into your familiar backyard, but into an immense landscape sculpted from frost and shadow, where the air itself feels like 1,000 tiny stinging needles against any exposed skin. The sun? Oh, that's become a rather distant, almost mythical memory. A pale rumour on the horizon for a few fleeting moments if you're lucky. This isn't your average picturesque winter wonderland, the kind you see on festive greeting cards. This is a place where the very earth seems to hold its breath, under a crushing blanket of white. And honestly, you probably won't survive this environment for more than a few hours without some serious time-tested ancestral knowledge. It's a reality check that puts our modern grumbles about a chilly commute into rather stark perspective. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd also love to see where you're tuning in from, and what time it is in your corner of the world. Drop it in the comments below. It's always fascinating to see how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself standing on the edge of an almost boundless expanse, a frozen desert stretching further than your eyes can comprehend. The light is peculiar. It's the heart of the long Arctic winter, and for weeks, perhaps months, the sun has been nothing more than a rumour, a faint blush on the southern horizon that barely musters the energy to announce a fleeting twilight. Instead, the world is bathed in the ethereal glow of the moon when it graces the sky and the shimmering, dancing curtains of the aurora borealis. These celestial lights paint the snows in hues of green, pink and violet, a silent, cosmic ballet performed for an audience of silent, stoic mountains and the vast, frozen ocean. It's a beauty so profound, so otherworldly, it almost makes you forget the gnawing cold that's already seeping into your core, despite the layers you thought were adequate. You quickly realise that adequate is a word with a very different meaning here. The silence is another thing altogether, is not just quiet, it's a silence so deep, so absolute, it feels like a physical presence. Sometimes it's broken by the mournful howl of the wind, a living entity that scours the landscape, piling snow into fantastic sculpted drifts, or polishing the sea ice until it gleams like black obsidian. Other times, you might hear the sharp crack of ice adjusting itself out on the frozen sea, a sound like distant rifle fire, reminding you that even the seemingly solid ground beneath your feet is in constant subtle motion. But mostly, it's a silence that presses in, amplifying the sound of your own heartbeat in your ears, the crunch of your boots on the crystalline snow. It's the kind of silence that forces introspection, that strips away the trivialities of a life lived further south. And it is cold. Not just chilly, not just wrap-up warm, cold. This is a cold that feels ancient, elemental. It bites at any exposed skin with an intensity that's shocking, quickly numbing your cheeks, your nose, the tips of your ears. Your breath plumes out in front of you, a white cloud that crystallizes almost instantly on your eyelashes, your eyebrows, the fur trim of your hood, if you were so wisely equipped. You learn very quickly to breathe through a scarf or a ruff, lest the frigid air sear your lungs. This relentless cold is the omnipresent companion, the constant adversary, the defining characteristic of this world. It dictates everything: movement, thought, survival. Some early European explorers, accustomed to more temperate climes, found it almost impossible to believe that human societies could flourish here. They often described the Arctic as a desolate, uninhabitable wasteland. Yet, flourish they did. You look around, and the landscape at first glance might seem monotonous. White meeting a darker sky, punctuated by the occasional stark silhouette of a pressure ridge or a distant ice-shrouded peak. But your eyes begin to adjust to pick out the subtle nuances, the different textures of snow, the soft powdery drift, the hard wind-packed slab, the varying shades of white from brilliant diamond dust sparkle under moonlight to the dull matte grey of an overcast pre-dawn. You start to notice the almost imperceptible tracks of an Arctic fox, a delicate tracery across a snowdrift, or the heavier, more purposeful prints of a polar bear. a stark reminder that you are not the apex predator here, not by a long shot. Out here, you're just another warm-blooded creature trying to keep the precious spark of life from being extinguished by the overwhelming indifferent cold. It's a humbling thought, isn't it? Especially when you consider your central heating back home is probably set to a balmy 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and you still sometimes feel a bit nippy. The sheer scale of it all is designed to make you feel small, insignificant. And yet, for thousands of years, people have called this formidable environment home. The Inuit and their ancestors, the Thule people, didn't just survive here, they thrived. They developed a culture, a technology, and a profound understanding of this frozen world that allowed them to live in balance with its brutal demands. Historians still argue whether the remarkable Thule expansion across the Arctic, starting around 1000 AD, was primarily driven by a changing climate that opened up new hunting grounds, or by the pursuit of resources like bowhead whales. Whatever the precise impetus, their journey is a testament to human adaptability. They didn't have Gore-Tex or thermal underwear or GPS. They had knowledge, passed down through generations, and an ingenuity born of absolute necessity. They knew how to read the ice, how to predict the weather from the faintest signs, how to find sustenance where a southerner would see only barren emptiness. And crucially, they knew how to create shelter, warmth, and community in the heart of the polar night, using the very material that defined their world, snow. The idea that snow, the epitome of cold, could be transformed into a warm, life-sustaining refuge is perhaps one of the most elegant paradoxes of human invention. It's like discovering that water can be used to build a fireproof house. It just doesn't seem to compute, yet it's brilliantly true. This stark, beautiful and unforgiving land is the crucible in which the Igluviagak, the snow house, was perfected. And you're about to understand just how vital that domed silhouette against the aurora-lit sky truly was, and it's into this very crucible that the ancestors of the people you now know as the Inuit stepped, not with trepidation, but with a profound inherited wisdom. The word Inuit itself simply means the people in their language, inuktitut, a quiet statement of belonging, of being intrinsically part of this immense icy tapestry. They are the descendants of the Thule people, who, as we touched upon, undertook a remarkable expansion across the Arctic from Alaska to Greenland around 1,000 years ago. Before the Thule, there were other cultures, like the Dorset, who also possessed an incredible ability to wrest life from the frozen land and sea. Archaeologists and anthropologists continue to debate the precise nature of the transition from Dorset to Thule culture, whether it was a case of displacement, assimilation, or a more complex interplay of factors. What is clear is that these were people not just passing through, but deeply, inextricably woven into the fabric of the cryosphere, the parts of the Earth's surface where water is in solid form. Imagine living a life where your every sense is constantly attuned to the subtle language of snow and ice. You don't just see white, you see 100 different whites, each telling a story. The blue tinge of old, compacted ice safe to walk on, the sugary sparkle of newly fallen powder that might hide treacherous hollows, the grey rubbery look of young sea ice too thin to bear your weight. You learn to listen to the ice groaning, cracking and booming, interpreting its sounds like a seasoned sailor reads the moods of the open ocean. Your nose can detect the faint oily scent of a seal's breathing hole from a surprising distance, or the subtle change in the air that presages an incoming storm. This isn't just knowledge, it's an embodied intelligence, a way of being in the world that is almost unimaginable to those of us who navigate by street signs and weather apps. It's like they had a built-in advanced weather forecasting system, probably more accurate than the one on your phone that confidently predicted sunshine right before that downpour last Tuesday. Their resilience is legendary, born not of brute force, but of ingenious adaptability and a profound respect for the forces of nature. They understood that you don't fight the Arctic, you learn to move with it, to understand its rhythms and to harness its austere bounty. This philosophy permeated every aspect of their lives, from their social structures to their spiritual beliefs. Cooperation wasn't just a nice idea, it was the bedrock of survival. A lone hunter, no matter how skilled, was vulnerable, but a group sharing knowledge, resources and the burdens of the hunt could thrive. If a hunter was successful, The catch was shared throughout the community, ensuring that everyone had a chance to make it through the lean times. This intricate web of reciprocity and obligation was as vital as any tool or shelter. Think about that next time you're sharing your Wi-Fi password with a neighbour. A vital resource in modern times, but perhaps not quite on the same life or death scale. Their material culture was a masterclass in making the most of what little the environment offered. Every part of a hunted animal was used. Meat for food, obviously. Fur and skins for clothing, tents and boat coverings, sewn with incredible precision using sinew for thread and fine bone needles. The traditional Inuit parka, with its sunburst ruff of wolverine or wolf fur around the hood, is a marvel of thermal engineering, designed to create a pocket of warm air around the face and prevent frostbite. Wolverine fur was particularly prized because it doesn't frost up as easily from breath moisture. Bones and ivory were carved into tools, harpoon heads, needles, toggles, and even intricate artwork and game pieces. Even the blubber, the fat from seals and whales, was precious, providing fuel for the all-important qualic, the soapstone lamp that was the heart of warmth and light in their homes. But we'll get more into that lifesaver later. One rather ingenious adaptation was the creation of snow goggles, traditionally crafted from bone, ivory, or wood. These weren't sunglasses in the modern sense. They were opaque, with narrow horizontal slits cut into them. This design drastically reduced the amount of light reaching the eyes, preventing the intensely painful condition of snow blindness, caused by the glare of the sun on vast expanses of snow. It's a brilliantly simple solution to a serious Arctic hazard, a sort of prehistoric Oakley, if you will. Their connection to the animal world was profound and deeply spiritual. Animals were not seen as mere resources, but as other beings, powerful and intelligent, deserving of respect. Success in hunting often depended on observing proper rituals and showing gratitude lest the animal spirits be offended and withhold their bounty. Shamans, or angakuit, played a crucial role in mediating between the human and spirit worlds, healing the sick, divining the location of game, and ensuring the spiritual well-being of the community. These beliefs provided a framework for understanding a world that could often seem capricious and overwhelmingly powerful. Historians still argue whether the elaborate Sedna myth, the powerful goddess of the sea animals, was a pan-Inuit belief or had more regional variations in its earliest forms, but her story underscores the critical importance of marine mammals to their existence. Consider the sheer tenacity required. For generations, they faced conditions that would make most of us give up and book the first flight to somewhere, anywhere, warmer. Yet they developed sophisticated hunting techniques, like waiting patiently for hours, sometimes days, by a seal's breathing hole in the sea ice, armed with a harpoon, in temperatures that would freeze exposed flesh in minutes. They built swift kayaks, kajak, for hunting seals and walrus in the summer waters, and larger umiaks for transporting families and goods, or for whaling. Their knowledge of animal behaviour was encyclopedic, passed down through oral tradition, through stories and songs, and through direct experience from childhood. A child learned to hunt by observing, by mimicking, by gradually taking on more responsibility. There were no schools in the way we understand them. The land itself was the classroom, and the lessons were often life or death. This intimate, almost symbiotic relationship with their environment is what allowed them to see the potential in a substance most of us associate with snowball fights and ski slopes. They saw in the frozen, crystalline water not an enemy, but an ally, a building material of surprising versatility and strength. They understood its insulative properties, its structural possibilities. It was this deep, lived understanding that led to the creation of the igluviagak, the snow house. It wasn't just a shelter, it was a manifestation of their genius, a testament to their ability to transform the very essence of winter's harshness into a haven of warmth and life. And it's this transformation, this Arctic alchemy, that we're slowly spiralling towards, much like the blocks of an igloo wall. Now let's talk about snow. Yes, snow. That fluffy white stuff you might curse when it blocks your driveway, or perhaps joyfully greet when it means a day off school or work. For the Inuit, however, snow was far more than an inconvenience or a plaything. It was a fundamental element of their existence, a resource of profound importance, and, somewhat paradoxically, the very key to warmth and survival during the long, dark winters. To understand the igloo, you first have to understand the peculiar, almost magical properties of snow itself. It's not just frozen water, it's a remarkably complex and versatile material. Think of it. The difference between a snowman that slumps sadly in the afternoon sun and one that stands proud for weeks is all down to the type of snow. The secret to snow's ability to insulate lies in its structure. Freshly fallen snow, especially the light, fluffy kind, is composed of countless tiny ice crystals, all intricately branched and delicate. Between these crystals are trapped vast quantities of air. In fact, new snow can be up to 90 to 95% trapped air. And as you might remember from a science class somewhere in your past, or maybe from one of those survival shows where they bury themselves in a snowdrift to avoid freezing, air is a fantastic insulator, especially when it's still and trapped in small pockets. It's the same principle behind a down jacket or a fiberglass bat in your attic walls. The material itself isn't inherently warm, but it's excellent at preventing the transfer of heat. So, a thick layer of snow acts like a cozy blanket, trapping the heat generated inside a shelter, whether that heat comes from a human body, a lamp, or even just the latent warmth of the earth below. You might be thinking, but snow is cold. How can it keep you warm? It's a perfectly reasonable question. The snow itself is indeed at or below freezing point. However, its power lies in its ability to slow down the rate at which warmth escapes. Inside an igloo, the inhabitants' body heat and the small flame of a kulik, that seal oil lamp we'll keep coming back to, gently warm the interior air. The snow walls, packed densely, prevent this warmed air from easily escaping out into the frigid minus 40 degrees Celsius or Fahrenheit, it's pretty much the same at that point, exterior. At the same time, those same snow walls prevent the bitter outside cold from penetrating inwards. It's a thermal standoff, and snow is the surprisingly effective referee. The thicker and denser the snow walls, the better the insulation. It's a bit like wearing multiple thin layers of clothing on a cold day. Each layer traps air and contributes to the overall warmth. Of course, not all snow is created equal when it comes to building. The light, fluffy powder that makes for great skiing is terrible for constructing an igloo. It has no structural integrity. It would be like trying to build a house out of cotton candy. The Inuit knew that the ideal snow for igloo construction was snow that had been compacted and hardened by the wind, and then allowed to sinter. Sintering is a fascinating process where individual ice crystals, under pressure and over time, begin to bond together, forming a more solid, cohesive mass. Wind-packed snow on the Arctic tundra, or the sea ice, often undergoes this transformation naturally, creating large drifts of firm, cuttable snow. This is the good stuff, the snow with enough tensile strength to be carved into sturdy blocks that won't crumble under their own weight or the stress of construction. The Inuit had, and still have, an incredibly nuanced vocabulary for snow, with dozens, if not hundreds, of words to describe its different states and qualities, words that have no direct equivalent in English. For example, Pukuk refers to the crystalline, powdery snow at the very bottom of a snowpack, often found near the ground, which is loose and sugary. Useless for building, but important for animals like lemmings to burrow in. Then there's Anu, the hard, compacted snow suitable for igloo blocks. The ability to read the snow, to find these patches of Anu, was a critical skill. An experienced builder would test the snow with a snow probe, a long, slender rod, often made of bone or antler, feeling for the right consistency and depth. They could tell by the resistance the probe met whether the snow was too soft, too crusty, or just right. It's a sensory skill honed over a lifetime, a bit like a chef knowing the exact moment dough is perfectly kneaded just by its feel. One quirky tidbit is that some hunters believed that certain types of snow sang or spoke when conditions were right for building, a subtle hum or creak that indicated its readiness. Whether this was purely a poetic interpretation, or based on audible physical changes in the snowpack as it settled and sintered, is something ethnographers find intriguing. Furthermore, the temperature of the snow itself plays a role. Snow that is too cold, say below minus 20 degrees Celsius, can become very brittle and difficult to work with. Snow that is too warm, close to its melting point, will be wet and heavy, and an igloo built from it might be prone to dripping or even collapsing. The sweet spot is snow that is cold enough to be firm and dry, but not so cold that it shatters when cut. Understanding these thermal properties was just as important as understanding the structural ones. Historians still argue whether the precise techniques for selecting and cutting snow blocks varied significantly across different Inuit regions, or if there was a more universally adopted methodology driven by the consistent physics of snow. The very act of building with snow also has an interesting effect on the material. As blocks are cut and placed, the slight compression and the subtle melting and refreezing at the contact points, caused by the pressure and a tiny bit of heat from handling, help to weld the blocks together. The structure actually becomes stronger as it settles, and as a thin layer of meltwater on the interior surface caused by the warmth inside refreezes and glazes the walls, making them more airtight and reflective. It's a dynamic material, constantly interacting with the forces acting upon it. You are essentially creating a monolithic structure where each block becomes an integral part of the whole, much stronger than the sum of its individual parts. It's this deep, almost intuitive grasp of snow physics that allowed the Inuit to turn winter's defining feature into their greatest architectural asset. They didn't just conquer the snow, they partnered with it. And it's this partnership that we'll explore as we start to lay the very first blocks of our conceptual igloo. So, you found your perfect patch of wind-hardened sintered snow, that anu we just talked about. The conditions are right, the snow probe has given you the green light, and now it's time to contemplate the sheer genius of the igloo's design. It's not just a random pile of snow blocks, it's a sophisticated piece of engineering, a self-supporting dome that derives incredible strength from its shape and the precise way it's assembled. The iconic image of the igloo is so familiar, yet few of us pause to consider the physics and architectural brilliance packed into that hemisphere of white. Forget your preconceived notions of a crude, temporary hut. This is architecture at its most elemental and effective. The fundamental shape of an igloo is a catenary dome. Now, don't let the fancy term scare you. A catenary is simply the curve that an idealized hanging chain or cable assumes under its own weight when supported only at its ends. If you flip that curve upside down, you get an incredibly strong arch structure, one that directs all the compressive forces downwards and outwards, effectively cancelling them out and creating a stable, self-supporting form. Think of the graceful arches in ancient Roman aqueducts or Gothic cathedrals. They often incorporate catenary principles. The dome of an igloo uses this same principle but extends it into 3 dimensions. This shape is inherently stable because it's primarily under compression, and snow, especially well-compacted snow, is surprisingly strong under compression. It's much weaker under tension, being pulled apart, which is why you can't just make a flat roof out of snow blocks. It would collapse. The dome shape cleverly avoids putting the snow under significant tensile stress. It's a design that's both elegant and incredibly efficient, maximising enclosed volume while minimising surface area, which also helps to conserve heat. You know, it's a bit like how an egg is surprisingly strong when you squeeze it end to end. The curved shape distributes the pressure. The construction process itself, which we'll delve into more deeply soon, involves cutting blocks and arranging them in an inward-leaning spiral. This spiralling, imbricated, overlapping like tiles on a roof, pattern is crucial. Each new block rests partially on the block below it, and also leans against the previously laid block in the same course. This creates a continuous rising ramp of snow that gradually curves inwards to form the dome. It's a bit like building a snail shell from the inside out. This method ensures that, even during construction, the structure is largely self-supporting. There's no need for internal scaffolding or supports, which would be impractical in a remote treeless environment. The builder works from within the footprint of the igloo, essentially building their shelter around themselves. The size of an igloo could vary considerably, depending on its purpose and the number of people it needed to house. A small temporary hunting igloo might be only 6 or 7 feet in diameter, built quickly by a lone hunter or a pair. A larger family igloo could be 12 to 15 feet across, comfortably housing a family for weeks or even months. There are even historical accounts, and some archaeological evidence, of very large ceremonial igloos, or kakik, sometimes constructed by joining several smaller igloos together, or by building one massive dome, capable of holding dozens of people for feasts, dances, and social gatherings. Building such a large snow structure would have required immense skill and cooperation. Imagine the community effort, everyone contributing their knowledge and labour to create a temporary snow coliseum. It boggles the mind. One fascinating aspect of the design is its adaptability. The basic domed structure is the core, but variations and additions were common. Entrance tunnels, for example, were a key feature. These weren't just simple holes. They were carefully designed to be lower than the main living floor. This created a natural cold trap. Cold air, being denser, would settle in the tunnel and stay there, preventing drafts and helping to keep the warmer air inside the main dome from escaping. The entrance often had a U-shape or a downward slope leading into the igloo, further enhancing this effect. Sometimes a porch or storage area would be built as a smaller dome, or lean-to attached to the main igloo, providing space for storing gear, meat, or for butchering animals out of the wind. Some igloos even had a window, often made from a clear piece of freshwater ice, which is usually clearer than sea ice, or a translucent piece of stretched seal gut, set into the wall to allow some natural light in during the twilight days. A quirky historical fact. Some early ethnographers reported that in certain regions, a piece of caribou shoulder blade scraped thin until it was almost translucent was occasionally used as a makeshift window pane. The orientation of the igloo relative to the prevailing winds was also an important consideration. Ideally, the entrance would be placed on the leeward side, away from the direct blast of the wind to minimise drafts and snow accumulation around the doorway. The Inuit were master observers of their environment, and this included understanding wind patterns and snowdrift formation. They knew how to use the landscape to their advantage, sometimes building in the lee of a small hill or a large snowdrift for extra protection. Historians still argue whether the precise angle of the igloo walls or the specific ratio of height to diameter was a matter of strict tradition, or allowed for more individual builder discretion based on snow conditions and intended use. What is certain is that the design was not arbitrary. It was the result of generations of trial, error, and refinement. The beauty of the igloo's blueprint lies in its simplicity and its perfect suitability to the available materials and environmental conditions. It's a structure that could be built relatively quickly, using only snow and a few simple tools, and yet it provided a secure and remarkably warm refuge against the deadliest of Arctic storms. It's a testament to the idea that sometimes the most elegant solutions are born from the most stringent constraints. No steel, no concrete, no advanced manufacturing, just snow, skill, and an intimate understanding of natural principles. This wasn't just folk architecture. This was sophisticated environmental design, centuries before such a term even existed. It's like the ultimate minimalist housing, but with life or death stakes. And as you stand there, snow knife in hand, figuratively speaking for now, you're about to become a part of this ancient tradition of transforming frozen breath into a haven of life. Now that you've grasped the architectural genius behind the igloo's domed design, the next critical step is the quest for the perfect building material. You can't just scoop up any old snow, as we've touched upon. Your life, quite literally, depends on finding snow with the right character, that firm, cohesive anu that can be cut into robust blocks. This search isn't a haphazard affair, it's a deliberate, skilled process, a kind of snowy prospecting that requires keen observation and a tactile understanding of the winter landscape. Imagine yourself scanning the undulating white plains, your eyes seeking out the subtle clues that point to suitable snow deposits. What are you looking for? You're searching for drifts, large accumulations of snow sculpted and packed by the wind. But not just any drift. A freshly formed drift made of soft, powdery snow is no good. It needs time to settle, to age, to undergo that magical transformation called sintering, where the individual snow crystals bond together. This process is driven by temperature gradients within the snowpack and the pressure of overlying snow. Over days and weeks, the snow compacts and hardens, its internal structure changing from a loose collection of flakes into a more homogeneous, almost felt-like mass. You're looking for snow that has a uniform consistency, without too many layers of ice or soft sugary snow, pukak, in between. These inconsistencies can create weak points in your igloo blocks. The ideal location for finding this construction-grade snow is often on the windward side of gentle slopes, or in areas where the wind has scoured the surface and then redeposited the snow in dense, even drifts. Sometimes, the middle of a large, flat, exposed area, like a frozen lake or the sea ice itself, will have extensive patches of perfectly wind-packed snow. You learn to read the texture of the snow surface. A very smooth, almost polished surface might indicate snow that is too hard, almost like ice, which would be difficult to cut and shape. A surface that is too soft and fluffy is obviously out. You're looking for a firm, matte finish, perhaps with subtle, wind-etched ripples called sastrugi, which often indicate well-compacted snow beneath.